Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel, Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. I have the sweetest job. I offer one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. And you can learn more at my website, illuminatingsouls.com, where you can also sign up for my mailing list. And if you have been listening for a while, I have a request. Would you be so kind as to leave a review on iTunes or Spotify, or share the podcast with a friend? We are growing by word of mouth, and so if you find this podcast a sweet space, perhaps you can share it with someone you sense will enjoy it as well. But for now, the angels and I are here to help create a sweet, comforting, soothing space where you can replenish and receive divine love and even drift off to sleep. As most of you know, this podcast is created because I have a love of sleep podcasts. I've been listening to them since about 2015, and they are an important part of my self-care, as are the angels. So I've blended these two beautiful parts of my life together to create this podcast for you. And we are somewhere in the vicinity of the 2-year anniversary of this podcast. I started it in December of 2021. At the time, I had promised myself that I would go for 100 episodes, and then I could renegotiate. And we're over 200 episodes in now, so we're still a thing. Isn't that great? It's really turned into a lovely oasis of light, not only for me, but for so many of you out there. And so if you have ever dropped me an email or sent me a message about enjoying the podcast, thank you so much. Because coming into this lovely space with you brings me a tremendous amount of joy and fulfillment. So thank you for listening. I'm a little off kilter as I record this, not in a bad way, but I normally record these episodes very early in the morning when it's still dark out. But I had an angel session early this morning, and then I got some work done, and I dawdled. And so now it's late morning, and I'm recording it, and the world is awake, and the sun is out. And I just feel like my rhythm is different. But it was either record now or maybe not record one for you for Sunday. And I thought, no, I really want to be here with you. So if this episode sounds a little bit different, it's because I'm recording it about 4 hours later than I usually record. So not only is the world awake, but I'm also awake too. You know, our connection, at least my connection, I should talk for myself, my connection with my consciousness shifts throughout the day. Early morning, I'm plugged in. It's easier for me to be gentle with myself, to come into flow. As the day moves on, my bandwidth can diminish. There were a couple of tasks that came to light one evening this week Nothing horrible, nothing terrible. I received a letter that I had to respond to. We got an estimate for a project that I had to address. And Wes came home from work and he's like, okay, let's get these things done. He's always full of energy. And I said, the me that I am right now is very overwhelmed by this. But tomorrow morning I'll be able to handle it. I just need until the morning. Let morning me handle this. And sure enough, I knew that if I just could put it off until the morning, the way that I connect with consciousness in the morning, I could easily access what I needed to access in order to complete the tasks at hand. But the me at 6 o'clock that night was profoundly overwhelmed and fatigued. So I share that with you in case it is helpful for you to recognize how your energy flows as well. I think we can wish and dream and perhaps will it to be so that our energy and our bandwidth and our executive function stays constant. But I find that's not the case, and it's not a bad thing. I'm fortunate that I have a job and a life that allows me to schedule things in a way that is very supportive of my circadian rhythm. And the sleep podcast is part of that. I love the end of the day. I start winding down my day around 3:30 or 4. Wes usually comes home about 4 or 4:30. So I usually try to be done with things by then. And we sort of nibble on some dinner. I don't really make big food or anything like that, but we kind of nosh our way through dinner. And I may be able to stay focused for 1 or 2 hours of television, not always. But certainly by 6:30, I'm thinking, bed's coming soon. This is awesome. I love my waking life. But I love that moment when I get to go to bed. And so I pull the covers over my head and I put in my earphones and I pick a podcast episode to listen to. And then I get to drift off to sleep. So I've designed this podcast to serve as a companion for you as you drift off to sleep, or as you make your way through the day. Maybe you just need a friendly voice keeping you company as you drive to work or go on your walk. Whatever it is you're doing. So whatever's happening in your world in this moment, I send you love. And it is my honor to bring the angels in to share this space with us. So I invite you to just take a deep breath in as we gently call ourselves forward into the heart of divine love. And beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here. And I ask that you infuse this broadcast with waves of love, waves of healing, and waves of light in service to our highest and best good. And I ask that you gather up that which feels heavy, that which feels overwhelming, and that you clear whatever can be cleared in service to our highest and best, and lift it up into the highest realms where it can be transformed in service. Dear ones, just take a nice deep breath in, breathing in the love. And the angels would like to know how they can support you. How can they help you? And just let the angels know, hey angels, very informal. Hey, angels, I could use some help with. Then you just fill in the blank. I love getting to co-create with the angels. It is a soft place in my life, in the best sense of the word. And so I love getting to share them with you as well. So just imagine, if you will, that the space that you are in is being filled with a soft pink light that is filled with divine love that has been calibrated just for you. You might wonder what that means. Well, the angels are not bound by time nor space, and they know what is transpiring in your life and in mine. And so the frequency of divine love that I might receive might be different than what you receive. It is calibrated for where each of us is in consciousness and in the world. Isn't that lovely? That the angels know what you need. They know what is going on in your life. They know what you are navigating, and they are here to love and support you. So just imagine, if you will, this beautiful soft pink light is filling the space you are in. Just breathing it into your body, allowing it to come into your heart and your mind and your spirit, bringing to you a sense of ease, a sense of kindness, a sense of well-being. And just breathe in this moment with the angels, allowing your body and mind and spirit to be soothed and comforted. You, my beautiful friend, you are precious in this world. You are a blessing. And it is so wonderful to help you remember who you are as a divine being in human form. So I invite you to breathe. You're still breathing. I know you are. It's just that moment of bringing our awareness into our breath and to our beingness. The angels are filled with gratitude for the gift of you. They are grateful for this opportunity to shine love upon you. And so they will take good care of you, and they will be with you while you rest and drift off to sleep, if that is your intention. And if sleep is your destination, I invite you to cozy on up and snuggle on in whatever way works best for you. And while you rest, we're going to move on into story time. And for story time, we are going to return to the pages of the 1977 July issue of TV Guide. I shared part 1 2 episodes ago, and we only got through Monday night. So we're going to pick up on Tuesday. If you've never heard one of these TV Guide episodes before, I love to just share where I was in that moment of my life, because it helps bring context to the editorial and color commentary I share with you about the listings. So 1977, I'm 15 years old. It is the summer, so I'm on break. I might be working at this point at Long John Silver's, the restaurant. I can't quite remember. I would be spending a lot of time with my girlfriends in malls, probably, eating and shopping. I'm definitely going through a hormonal storm that is probably very familiar with anyone who has been a teenage girl or lived with one. And we'll see where we go. So it's Tuesday morning. I normally don't start in the morning because as a teenage girl I would be sleeping, but I had to because this program delights me and I don't think I've ever seen it. So in syndication is an episode of Here's Lucy. And this one has Sammy Davis Jr. And Sammy Davis Jr. lets Lucy on the set during the filming of his big scene. Now, you might not think that that's a big deal, but I love Sammy Davis Jr. I don't think I loved him when I was 15 years old, but I developed, I don't know, I just thought he was so cool. I just really adored him. And so did my cousin Susie. And so I would say when we were in our 30s, we came into heavy appreciation about Sammy Davis Jr. And we even got to see him in Vegas with Jerry Lewis, which was awesome. So this is Sammy Davis Jr. on an episode of Here's Lucy. So now we're going to go on into the afternoon. At 15 years old, I wasn't watching soaps. Ryan's Hope would be the first soap I would get into, then followed by All My Children. And I didn't get into All My Children until the summer of Jenny and Greg, so I don't think this was that was happening yet. But some of our options for afternoon viewing on Tuesday would be Dinah, which is Dinah Shore, and this is such a 1970s lineup of Carol Channing, Phyllis Diller, Debbie Reynolds, and Jill Ireland. That's just iconic. Carol Channing, Phyllis Diller, and Debbie Reynolds. That would have been good. 15-year-old me wouldn't have cared. 61-year-old me absolutely would watch. Mike Douglas has oh my God, this is such a great lineup. Christy McNichol, Andrea McArdle, and Stephanie Mills. So I loved Christy McNichol and I wanted her to be my best friend along with Valerie Bertinelli. Both Andrea McArdle and Stephanie Mills, I think, were really hot on Broadway at that point. Andrea McArdle was the first Annie from Annie the Musical. And Stephanie Mills, I know, was in The Wiz, I believe. I should look that up and make sure I'm right. Well, okay, yay me. Yes, Stephanie Mills originated the role of Dorothy in The Wiz. So that would have been a really great lineup. There would have been singing for sure. I could have pretended I was friends with Christy McNichol. That would have been good. And then if I wanted to kind of dive into syndication, there was a Partridge Family episode. This is The Ethics of Friendship. Lori's about to take the rap for a friend who stole an exam. So I was always game for an episode of The Partridge Family or Brady Bunch. You know, that was comfort food to me, comfort viewing, if you will. Okay, this is one of the episodes of the Brady Bunch that's in syndication. Musical problems disturb the Brady harmony. Do you remember what episode that was? I think that was the episode where the youngest Brady boy, his voice was changing. And they were singing. I think that that's what that one was about. And then we're going to move on into prime time. There's a pilot for something I don't know called Royce, which was a Western. I'm going to skip on over that because I certainly wouldn't have cared and I didn't watch it. Baba Black Sheep. Again, never watched it, but that was with Robert Conrad. And I wouldn't have watched it because you know what was on? 1977. Happy Days. We were all watching Happy Days in 1977. And in this episode, Howard and Fonzie hope to make a big splash in the business world with an invention years ahead of its time, a trash compactor they call the garbage gulper. I would have watched that for sure. Merv Griffin is on. It must be in syndication, and his guests are Jerry Van Dyke, Marvin Hamlish, Julie Nixon Eisenhower, and a pianist, Monty Alexander. But I, of course, would not be watching that because Laverne and Shirley was on after Happy Days. You had to watch both. So in this episode of Laverne and Shirley, Shirley winds up in a sleazy waterfront bar in search of her irresponsible dad after he fails to show up for their dinner engagement. Wow, that sounds like an intense episode for Laverne and Shirley. They didn't typically deal with that kind of storyline. I'm sure I've seen that episode. I have no recollection of it. Also airing on Tuesday night is MASH, which was always on in our family when it was airing. Hawkeye and BJ may have to amputate the leg of a former college football star who'd rather die than never play again. In a subplot, Frank arranges a grudge fight between high-heeled Klinger and burly Sergeant Zale. We would have absolutely been watching that. If MASH was not your thing, you could watch Policewoman with Angie Dickinson, or you could watch Woody Allen's movie Sleeper. I would have just rolled right on into One Day at a Time, though. Speaking of people I wanted to be best friends with, Valerie Bertinelli. In this episode, Schneider and Ginny, played by Mary Louise Wilson, join Anne, of course played by Bonnie Franklin, and the girls to turn a dull New Year's Eve into a festive event for two elderly friends in their neighborhood. And then if you stayed awake until 10 o'clock, you could watch Kojak, of course with Telly Savalas, or another episode of Police Story. And we will zoom on over to Wednesday. So on Hollywood Squares, they have Carol Lawrence, Paul Lynde in the center square, of course, John Ritter, and Elke Summer. And then, let's see, who is on the talk shows? Dinah has George Montgomery. And catch this, she has both Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. And I had to look up the release date. So they said that Star Wars was released in a small number of theaters in May of 1977. So, by the first week in July of 77, I don't know how big Star Wars was at that time, if it was already a massive hit or on its way to becoming one. But they have Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher on Dinah Shore, along with Pamela Sue Martin, who I believe was playing Nancy Drew at the time, Marlena Shaw, I don't know who that is, and Wayne Dyer. So I'm thinking Star Wars was not yet a massive hit, because if it was, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher would have been a casting coup. They would have gotten top billing, and they probably would not have had other guests. I'm just guessing. Okay, I actually had to go look it up, and it does look like it was number one at the box office. So there you go. That would have been very exciting. And had I already seen Star Wars, which I probably had at that point, I would have for sure wanted to watch that. Mike Douglas is in Atlanta with Burt Reynolds and Tammy Wynette, along with comedian Dom DeLuise. All right, so let's go ahead and see what is on. So, on Wednesday night, we can watch Good Times, always a terrific show to watch, to pay for the unveiling of his newest showbiz discovery. J.J. Barrows from Loan Sharks and then must contend with his star's opening night jitters and a pair of thugs waiting backstage for their money. That was a really good show. But I would not be watching it because... Wait, first let me tell you what else I wouldn't be watching. which would be an episode of Grizzly Adams, which was not really my thing. But if you liked it, in this episode, Adams risks arrest to save his animal friends from an erupting volcano rather than hide from the famous lawman. And why I wouldn't be watching either one of those other shows is because Donnie and Marie was on. I always would watch Donnie and Marie. So in this episode, Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, Rich Little, and Georgia Engel are the guests. Sketches include a Wild West showdown between a pair of whipped cream-toting cowboys. That sounds awful. Rich demonstrating what might have happened to film classics had they been cast differently. And a lecture on shyness by Georgia, playing the president of the National Association to Prevent Shyness. I was always down for an episode of Donnie and Marie, and they had ice skaters, so that was a good thing. Let's see what else is on here. Marilyn McCoo and Billy Davis Jr. had a variety show. I did not know that or remember that. Also airing is CPO Sharky, which I wouldn't have watched, and an episode of Beretta, which I would watch because of the bird, because of the cockatoo. You know, I had my priorities back in the day. Birds, cockatoos, you know, those kinds of things I would be interested in. Also airing is a show I don't remember at all, Kingston Confidential, and Kingston is played by Raymond Burr. So I don't remember that. Raymond Burr does frequent our home via Perry Mason reruns because Wes likes that show. So we watch a lot of Perry Mason here. You know, Wes works so hard, and I like that when he comes home, I can find a show that helps him decompress. Also airing is Charlie's Angels. Now, this is early Charlie's Angels with Farrah Fawcett still in the cast, and she is Farrah Fawcett Majors still, so you know this is early on. So in this episode, the former head of an elite World War II intelligence unit requests protection after several of his old comrades in arms are methodically eliminated by a professional assassin. Sabrina, of course, played by Kate Jackson. Jill is Farrah Fawcett Majors, and Kelly is Jacqueline Smith. Always a good show during that particular era of growing up. I was trying to decide if I was going to do a non sequitur there about Charlie's Angels in that era of the 70s. I guess I will. Why not? It's I don't mean this to sound like a super sad story or anything, but you know, in that era, we grew up with a lot of images of very thin, athletic women. Whether it was the Bradys or the Partridges or Charlie's Angels or whoever it was. And at the time, I was still overweight. I've been overweight my whole life. And I had this thought that if I lost weight, I would suddenly look like them. It sounds so weird to say it now, but you know, somehow if I lost weight, I would be that toned and that athletic and that perfect. But hardly anyone is that perfect, and most of us have these beautifully, wonderfully unique, imperfect bodies. So I just was thinking back that at 15 years old, I was still harboring the magical thinking that there would be something that I could do that would help me look like them one day. I, of course, was relieved of that belief as I got older, and it's okay. I love who I am, and I love this beautiful body of mine, but it just reminds me of that age stage, and at least for me, how much I identified with my physicality. That my physical reflection was the most important part of how people perceived me. And it would take me a long time to move beyond that. So thanks, Charlie's Angels. But it was a good show. And they had great hair. And they looked great when they ran. Like when I exert myself, my face turns bright red. So I get really flushed and my hair frizzes all over the place. And these three women, when they would run, they would look fantastic. Now I realized that there were makeup artists and hair stylists and everything else, but it kind of fed that illusion that some people would look perpetually beautiful even when they were running down the street in heels. So just a little walk down memory lane with the ladies of Charlie's Angels. So if I was staying up late, Johnny Carson is on, and he has Bobby Goldsboro, who is a singer. Or I could watch a rerun of either Columbo or Love American Style or The Rookies. I don't know what I would have watched. I don't remember watching a lot of late night television, so I probably wouldn't have watched any of that stuff. Ooh, on Thursday, we have such a good episode of Dinah Shore. It's a salute to welcome back Cotter with Gabe Kaplan, John Travolta, Robert Hedges, Ron Palillo, and Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, and John Sylvester White. I for sure would have been watching that. First of all, Welcome Back Cotter was awesome. And John Travolta was the sun and the moon and the stars back then for many of us. So I would have for sure watched that. I loved watching the talk shows like that, the panel shows, because you would get a glimpse into what their personality might be like. You know, these days it's hard to imagine that celebrities were so inaccessible to us back then. We very much were fed a PR perspective of their personality and their likes and, you know, who they were. There were the rags like National Enquirer, but they weren't given very much weight. Whereas these days, we have so much access to celebrities because of social media and the paparazzi and everything else. But back then, in 1977, there was an innocence about celebrity. And so being able to watch them casually banter, whether it was with Dinah Shore or Mike Douglas or Johnny Carson, was a real treat. Speaking of Mike Douglas has Ruth Gordon, George Jessel, and screenwriter Anita Loos, and ragtime pianist Eubie Blake. That is a really powerful lineup that 15-year-old me would have cared nothing about, and 61-year-old me would absolutely tune in to hear their stories, for sure. Then again, if I didn't want to watch that, I could watch, yes, another episode of The Partridge Family. But not this episode. Okay, maybe not this episode. This episode is Trials of Young Love unfold in the story about Danny and an 11-year-old admirer. I never liked the Danny-centric episodes. I found him to be annoying. So I went to watch that one. And then we will... Oh, wait. First, let me tell you who is going to be on Hollywood Squares that night. John Amos, Lynn Anderson, George Gobel, Linda Lavin, Paul Lind, say it with me, in the center square, Rosemarie, Tony Randall, Jimmy Walker, and Jonathan Winters. That is a great lineup. I feel like I talked about this already, but maybe that's who was on all week long. And you know, I don't know if you didn't grow up in the US, if you knew about Hollywood Squares, but it was a game show, like tic-tac-toe, and the celebrities sat in the boxes, and the stage was elevated, and Paul Lynde, who is a comedian based here in the U.S., always was in the center square. If Paul Lynde was not in the center square, something was wrong with the world. Like, we all grew up with Paul Lynde in the center square. So on Thursday night, we've got the Waltons on. I always loved a good episode of the Waltons. And in this episode, Mary Ellen, played by Judy Norton, is starstruck and Grandma is scandalized when a flamboyant actress is stranded at the Waltons. This was an episode from 1973, so it really is a pretty old rerun. Welcome back, Cotter. Gotta love that show. In this episode, Cotter's personal and professional problems are escalating. His wife has moved out, and novice class leader Washington is barking orders like a drill master. It's the second of 2 parts. So as I spoke about in the last episode, back then we did not have VCRs. So when there was a 2-parter, you were invested. You had to watch it. So you would arrange to be home because I have to stay home. It's the second part of the Welcome Back Cotter episode. But this is a rerun and I had probably seen it before, so I don't know that I would have had to stay home for it. I don't know where else I would have been on a Thursday night, but who knows. This one is interesting. Merv Griffin is saluting the film New York, New York, with guests Liza Minnelli, Mary Kay Place, Lionel Stander, and director Martin Scorsese. Now here's the thing, if you are quite a bit younger than me, you might not know that the song New York, New York, the one that starts with "Start spreading the news, I'm leaving today," was written for this movie, New York, New York, and first sung by Liza Minnelli. It later was sung by Frank Sinatra, but it debuted in this movie sung by Liza Minnelli. So before 1977, we did not have this song, which is now so iconic and such a part of our collective songbook. So Merv Griffin and Liza Minnelli singing New York, New York. How amazing is that? I love Liza Minnelli. I have a few of her CDs. I just love her. Okay, What's Happening is on. I don't know that I would have been well, maybe I would have been watching that. 2 tickets to a Stevie Wonder concert. I don't know if Stevie Wonder was actually on it, though. Hawaii Five-0 was on, which I never watched, and Barney Miller, which I would have watched. And in this episode, Wojo, played by Max Scale, stalks off the job when a new regulation calls for detectives to alternate as uniformed cops. I always loved that show. And Fish, which was the spin-off with Abe Vigoda. A suspicious fish, played by Abe Vigoda, investigates Victor's sudden wealth and discovers that the young man is involved in a numbers racket. And then there is something called West Side Medical, which I don't remember at all. I love a good medical drama, but I don't remember that one at all. If we go into late night TV, we've got Anthony Newley and Rodney Dangerfield on Johnny Carson, or a rerun of Kojak, or Love American Style, or SWAT. Again, I would probably be asleep by then. And again, it's so interesting. Back in the day, the TV stations would actually go off the air. You know, now things are airing 24/7. We live in a streaming world. Back then, if you were up at 2 or 3 in the morning, You might have a really bad old movie, you might have a religious programming, or you might just have color bars. And the station would be off the air until first thing in the morning. And they usually would come back on the air with a religious program or news or something like that. And that brings us to Friday. Friday was always a happy day. I'd be done with school, although I was on vacation, so I didn't really care. So the movie The Russians Are Coming is airing, which I don't remember. But it sounds funny just based on the cast. Carl Reiner, Ellen Arkin, Eva Marie Saint, Brian Keith, Jonathan Winters, Theodore Bickel. Have you seen this? It sounds good. I mean, I don't even know what it's about. I just like the cast. In this 1966 farce, a Soviet landing party skulks about in search of a motor launch to tow their beached sub. I have no idea if it's good or not. I just think that cast sounds fantastic. Sanford and Son is on. Something called Bridger, a TV movie. I don't know what that is. There is a baseball game. If you are a baseball fan, it's Pittsburgh Pirates meets the New York Mets. You can also watch Chico and the Man. Merv Griffin has Jackie Mason, Stan Kahn, Hermione Badley, and singer Stephen Bishop. And then at 9 o'clock we have Rockford Files, which was such a good show. So in this episode of Rockford Files, Becker, played by Joe Santos, is set up as the fall guy for a narcotics ring that has stolen a load of confiscated heroin from a police property room. I remember my parents really liked Rockford Files, so we would often watch that. And then there's also an episode of Quincy on. So Quincy, of course, played by Jack Klugman, is asked to reopen a manslaughter case. A woman insists that her alcoholic father is the victim of a conspiracy and was falsely convicted. There is a pilot for something called Stop the Presses, which I don't remember. 2 energetic cub reporters for a small-town newspaper jeopardize their careers to expose a corrupt politician. This is a pilot for a series that is not on CBS's fall schedule, with John Rubinstein, Brian Gordon. I don't recognize any more of these names. I have to say, I wish there was a really good newspaper series on again. I loved Lou Grant. What was another newspaper one? Oh, there was one that was just on about, was it called Alaska with Hilary Swank? I always love a good, newspaper journalist series. It's been a long time since we've had one, and they canceled the one with Hilary Swank, I think. I don't know. I hope it comes back. It was a really good show. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And that brings us to the end of the programming for that week of TV Guide. But wait, there is more. We've got the TV Guide crossword puzzle that I am always a fan of because it makes me feel smart, although I don't know how smart this one is going to make me. So one across is a football team, and it is 4 letters. So I guessed that it was the Rams. And I think I'm right because 1 down, 3 letters, is comedian Charlotte blank, which I think is Charlotte Ray. And then 5 across, and I guess I'll be showing my age that I know this one. So it's one of Red Skelton's characters. Blank Cadiddlehopper. I don't know why I know this. It's Clem. I think it's Clem Cadiddlehopper, right? So let's see if I'm right. Let's see what's 5 down. I don't know that one. I have to look for one. Yeah, it's Clumcadiddlehopper, I'm pretty sure. And I would be impressed. And then 12 down, let's see, 12 across. Oh, you'll know this one. Especially think it's Star Wars. Star Wars, the first Star Wars, 1977. So, I'm sorry, my neighbor just started using his saw. So if you hear that, I'm sorry, I can't help it. So 12 across is Sir Blank Guinness. And it's 4 letters. Alec Guinness, who played Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Okay, here's one I know you can get. A series starring Dick Van Patten. 3 words. Long. It's a long one. So Dick Van Patten played the father in the show 8 is Enough. See, I'm not smart enough to do the New York Times crossword puzzle. The TV Guide crossword puzzle, especially one from 1977, can meet me where I am. Okay, can I do another non sequitur with you? It's kind of related about feeling smart, which is what I was thinking about the TV Guide crossword puzzle. So I'm participating in a years-long study for Parkinson's research. It's a longer story than I can share in this podcast. I don't have Parkinson's. My dad did. And I have qualified to participate in a years-long study with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And so I go once a year, and they do lab work, and they do scans, and I have to take cognitive tests. And these cognitive tests always kind of bring up school karma for me. It's like, am I smart? Can I do things? And so when I'm able to ace something on the cognitive test, I get so happy. I'm like, I knew that. I knew that that was a rhinoceros, or that was a giraffe. I got that one right. Like, the student in me loves to be right about things. So, let's see. Oh, here's one. You're going to totally know this one. It's 27 across. Cagney's, you dirty blank. Do you know what that one is? It's 3 letters. You dirty rat. See, and I feel so smart. Blank King Cole. Nat King Cole, thank you very much. Some of these I don't know. Series starting John Ritter. Come on, you know this one. A series starring John Ritter, 1977. Three's Company. Come and knock on my door. I just need you to know there are so many things I do not know. But I know 1977 television trivia. I don't know how our minds work or our memories work. This stuff is like super glued into my brain. Let's see what else. 3 across. 3 down. 3 down. One of the Little Women. So the Little Women are Joe, Meg, Amy. Joe, Meg, Amy, and Beth. So Amy and Meg are both 3-letter names. So if one across is the Rams, and so 3 down begins with an A, this would be Amy. Ta-da! And I know classic literature in the form of Little Women. And just as another non sequitur, if you are a Little Women fan, I highly recommend the book Marmee, Marmee, which is a retelling of Little Women from Marmee's perspective. It is so good. I listened to the audiobook. Phenomenal. Okay, here's one. 16 down. A blank grows in Brooklyn. A tree grows in Brooklyn. I love that I know that. Opera star Beverly blank. Beverly Sills. I know this because my mom loved her. Angie Dickinson's role. Let's see. Hold on. I know what the first name of her character is. So it's 36 down. Okay, I got it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 6 letters. And listen, I don't remember this. I only know this because I flipped through old TV guides for this podcast. But Angie Dickinson's character's name in Policewoman was Pepper. I would not have remembered that had I not flipped through many old TV guides for this podcast. But I know that now. So there you go. A little Wayback Machine with the television crossword puzzle from July of 1977. Okay, I'm not going to read this whole article, but I have to just read part of it. So on the cover of this TV guide, it's for CPO Sharkey. And the actor Peter Isaacson is the co-star to Don Rickles. And this is the part that caught my attention. He's talking about his apartment. He says, I've got to do something about this high rent, he said. He says he pays $200 a month for a 2-story apartment with a pool, minutes from NBC's Burbank studio, which he drives to in his 1967 Mercedes 250S, bought used for $3,500. So that's like a crazy, I don't even know what the rent was supposed to be back then, but that just made me stop and pause. So this would have been right after Rocky was a big thing, because Talia Shire and Burt Young, who received Academy Award nominations for their roles in Rocky, are the stars of Daddy, I Don't Like It Like This, a TV movie written by Young. Gilda Radner of NBC's Saturday Night and Victor Garber of Godspell fame will sing and dance as the Jack and Jill of hearts and a fanciful deck of cards in Jack, A Flash Fantasy, a rock opera to be shown July 26th on PBS. I never heard of that. Okay, this kind of has Circus of Stars kind of thing to it. Good sports from the United States, England, and other countries will swim, run, bowl, play, tennis, and golf for the glory of their native lands on Us Against the World, a 2-hour primetime special for the next season on NBC. Cast includes Chevy Chase, Gabe Kaplan, Dan Haggerty, who played Grizzly Adams, Christy McNichol, Jennifer O'Neill, and then for the Brits, we've got Rod Stewart, Marty Feldman, representing the rest of the world. I guess only 2 Brits. I'm sure there must be more. Are Britt Eklund, Elkie Summer, Rich Little, who's from Canada, and Charo. This sounds so terrible. I'm sure I would have watched it. Is that terrifying? And Elton John is going to be a guest of Kermit the Frog on the next season of The Muppet Show, which would have been fantastic. And it would not be a late 1970s TV guide without an ad for either the RCA or the Columbia Record Club. In this one, it is the RCA music service, and they show 8 tracks. So you can get 6 tapes or records for only 5 cents plus postage and handling. And you could choose things like Steve Miller's Fly Like an Eagle, Captain and Tennille, Love Will Keep Us Together, Peter Frampton, Jefferson Starship, Natalie Cole, Bay City Rollers, who were awesome back then, John Denver's greatest hits. I loved John Denver. The Monkees' greatest hits. I would go on to work for Michael Nesmith as an adult. An Evening with John Denver, Jim Croce, Three Dog Night. Definitely a trip into the Wayback Machine. Barry Manilow. You can't leave out Barry Manilow here. Neil Sedaka. Helen Reddy. Carpenters. So, lots of memories in that playlist. And so, my beautiful friends, that brings us to the end of another issue of TV Guide. Thank you for going with me into the Wayback Machine and imagining that we are watching TV together. I don't even know that we had a remote back then. I think we just had to get up, actually physically get up and change the channel. I was going to say we could take turns with the remote, but we would actually have to get up and change the channel probably. So here's to old TV memories. And here's to beautiful, wonderful you. So I wish you the sweetest of dreams. I wish you love. I wish you goodness. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Thank you, beautiful friend.